G'day battlers, and we are back to talk about another Play Pokemon local tournament, this time the largest local tournament held in the Oceanic region, and who better to watch go through it but the champion himself, RicFlareon. Now, RicFlareon is a man that needs no introduction. Not only was he world's top 16 at the first World Championships in London, he was also top 16 at the Yokohama World Championships as well, and of course, comes through and dominates the Australian scene as well. So a very, very strong battler, and one that you always have to watch out for when he's in a tournament. So today we're going to see his run through the essentially 6 rounds of this tournament. And I'll do a little bit of a ramble at the start here about the teams, about the tournament. So if you do want to skip straight to the battles, as always, there's timestamps in the progress bar down below, so you can skip straight to there. But without further ado, let's take a look at the teams that we've got here. Actually, I should probably say as well, this is essentially the first local tournament that we've had access to in our state with the actual World of Wonders update. So in the last video, I went through my run through a local tournament here last week. I was going to say in Sydney, but it was sort of halfway through where I live, Newcastle and Sydney. It was a halfway point. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But in that video, it was sort of in this in-between period where you could use moves that had been buffed or nerfed. So you could use things like Brick Break because it had just been altered, I guess, and Pokemon already had the move. But you couldn't use either new Pokemon or new moves that had been added to the game or added to new Pokemon. So for example, you couldn't use Sand Attack as a fast move on any of the Pokemon it was added to. And you also couldn't use things like Shadow Claw for Alligator, which was very much one of the big things. And I will say straight away, Feraligatr is the most used Pokemon in this tournament. So we don't see any in round 1 if you've already taken a peek at the teams, but we will see some as we go along because, again, it is the most used Pokemon in this specific local tournament. So keep that in mind. Essentially, this is the first chance for a lot of us to actually get our hands dirty in the brand new meta. So that is sort of where we're coming into here. But with that said, let's take a look at the teams over on the right-hand side. We have RicFlareons down in the bottom right-hand side with the Lantern, the Skarmory, the Hakamo'o, with the Brick Break, of course, and then Vigoroth, Shadow Gligar, and Trevenant. And I will say, shout out to DracoViz because I just yoinked the Pokemon sprites straight from the website. Usually I sort of, make the team graphics from some random folder of Pokemon Go sprites I downloaded one time. This time I was just like, oh wait, the teams are right there. So just copy pasted. And also shout out to DracoViz for making it really easy for us to register for this tournament. Like we just set up, they set up a tournament page. We registered our teams, the TO printed it off, really, really easy. So shout out DracoViz, really, really helpful. But anyway, in this, in the team here, we've got Double Flyer, we've got sort of Double Fighter. Neither of them actually have the fighting type, but you've got Vigoroth with counter and you have Hakamo'o with the Brick Break action, I guess, going on. And then it is running Dragon Tail, I should say, as well. And then you're sort of running the Lantern to sort of help round things out. And Trevenant I feel like Trevenant's a very interesting pick in that it feels like a very old guard Pokemon. It doesn't feel like it has a ton of stock running around, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's still good. Like you've still got Shadow Claw, Shadow Ball, which is one of the best move combinations in the game. And then you've got Seed Bomb, which gives you really good coverage against all of the waters running around. I will say there was only one Whiscash in the tournament run by this guy. So, it's... there's still a lot of Lanterns that you can hit, and as we can see on Kawaid's team, there is also a Greninja. So let's take a look at that. He's also running the Shadow Bayleaf, which is, his sort of signature Pokemon, and he is running Razeleaf. But we've also got the Bastiodon just to make things extra special. We've got the Mandibuzz, we've got Greninja, we've got the Skeledirge, and we have Annihilape as well. And I think that's running Ice Punch, Shadow Ball. It is open movesets, so, we can see all of those movesets, and I can, when I forget moves, which I eventually will, I can just check on the DracoViz page as well, because it is all on there too. So regardless, let's actually just start to look, move towards the battles, take a look at the teams here, because Lantern is straight away looking really strong against, Kawaid. Unclear which way you should say it, and he says that both are appropriate, so it is what it is. Definitely a Spice legend, though. Was top 16 at the Melbourne Regional Championships with a relatively similar team to this one, with that Shadow Bayleaf making an appearance. But I feel like Lantern is like, you've got strength against the Bastia, against the Mandibuzz, against the Greninja, against the Skeledirge. You're not too bad against the Annihilape. You were literally just scared of that Shadow Bayleaf. So I feel like for RicFlareon, it's very much just a case of use Lantern, and then protect Lantern. So you can either go for the Skarmory or the Gligar to sort of give that flyer coverage. Because there's a Bastiodon on the other team and a Skeledirge with Incinerate, both of those two mons would be pretty good against Skarmory. So I feel like Gligar becomes the obvious choice to sort of try and protect that Bayleaf and also have that good dig damage to hit the other two as well. You've also got Aerial Ace for the Annihilate. It feels like a very strong Pokemon. And then from there, I feel like you can sort of just round out your team with quite a few different things. So let's take a look, dive into the battles. Oh, that's a photo of everyone. That wasn't the one I meant to bring up, but I'm there. Regardless, this one is the actual battles. So let's jump into round 1, game 1, RicFlareon versus Quiet, and we have the Lantern straight into the Mandibuzz. So a really nice lead for RicFlareon, and you can see that he's got the Hakamo'o in the back as well. Interesting that Quiet is staying in here. I guess he just wants to get a little bit of a chip and dip. Gets for the Dark Pulse off. Maybe, I feel like he must be a little bit weak to this Lantern in the back. I mean, actually, we know he's weak to Lantern in the back. Kawhi wants to land his Shadow Bayleaf onto this Lantern, so I assume he's just going to go for the strategy of letting the Lantern take the Mandibuzz out, and then being able to swap the Bayleaf right in. Actually, Lantern got so low that he was like, I'm just going to have to swap it in now. In comes the Hakamo'o, who is going to resist all of that Razor Leaf damage and also be able to get quite a lot of Dragon damage off here. The Dragon Claw going through. Bayleaf is going to be able to get a move off here, but I think RicFlareon can pretty comfortably shield, Dragon Tail down, and then that's pretty much going to be it's going to be it. Mandibuzz is really low health, and his Skeledirge, so move timing, you go for 3 Dragon Tails, you go on the 10th turn throwing the Dragon Claw to match up with the 10 turns of the 2 Incinerates, and then throwing another one here, just trying to get the damage off. That Skeledirge getting pretty close to a charge move here, so I feel like I'm going to go for 1 more Incinerate, 2 more Incinerates. Okay, Kawhi getting very greedy with the energy here. Maybe trying to go for a really full farm down, or it's aggressive, that's for sure. But okay, now throws the move. Probably could have thrown it 1 Dragon Claw earlier, I think. But now Gligar comes in, going to have to face another move. RicFlareon able to shield up here because he still has that disarming voice. Can farm all the way down, and then there is that tiny little bit of health on the Mandibuzz as well. I probably should have mentioned that this is Swiss as well, so the opponents, you're sort of going to get mashed up with people winning as you go along. But game number 2, we have the Hakamo'o into the Greninja, and you can just see how much those Dragon Tails are adding up onto Greninja. Again, dragon typing, so you're resisting the water shurikens, you're resisting the hydro cannons, and these brick breaks are super effective and debuff the defense of the opponent. So really, really nice there. Gets a little bit of energy and then swaps that into Lantern. Again, Lantern's sort of just that soak, and I guess Kawhi is sort of expecting that Shadow Bayleaf is probably in the back. RicFlareon is probably expecting that, so probably makes sense to sort of use up your Lantern in this matchup, where you can definitely do a pretty solid job, get a few shields out of Kawhi, and then just dip into something else so that you still have that coverage for the Shadow Bayleaf later. I think that was a bit of an undercharge from Annihilate, but now Gligar's going to come straight in, doesn't even let him get an Ice Punch off, and now he's, okay, it's Bastiodon, no shields, Shadow Gligar with Dig with 2 shields. RicFlareon looking pretty dominant here, and there is not much that Kawhi can do, and this is going to be a pretty quick 2-0, which means that RicFlareon will be going into round number 2 as soon as he takes out the rest of this. Oh, actually, okay, tries to make a catch, but unfortunately doesn't succeed. So you're going to let the Gligar go down. Oh, doesn't quite go down even, and now it is just up to Hakamo'o to get 1 charge move off. He's still got 2 shields. Use 1 shield here, take out the Greninja, and that is going to be G's on round number 1. I didn't actually explain the tournament very well at all, to be honest, even though I took we're 9 minutes into the video now, and it's been 2 battles. But regardless, this is essentially 4 rounds of Swiss. So essentially people play each other on the same win rating. So if they were 0-0, so everyone just randomly matched up. But now that RicFlareon has won once, he's going to tend to face someone else who has won once. If he win again, then he'll probably be up against someone else who is 2-0. Whereas if he lost and he was at a 1-1 record, he would probably face someone else who had a 1-1 record. So the opponents sort of scale to how you're performing, and eventually you tend to end up with one sort of winner at the end. But in this format, if you aren't familiar, because we have more than 8 players, there is essentially a top cut. So the top 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, all go into another single elimination bracket. and there's another 2 rounds from there, essentially. So to win the tournament, you've got to play through 6 rounds, and this is round 2 of Swiss, and wouldn't you believe it, Kawhi, a Spice Lord, definitely, renowned for running that Shadow Bayleaf as well. And who does RicFlareon get matched up against? But in round 2, Raymondocool, who is also running Shadow Bayleaf. Like at some point in the tournament, I think it was Rick and Bamboss, they sort of like, maybe I was reporting a score, and they were like, there's more Shadow Bayleaf in this tournament than Whiscash, which is just insane to me. Like, that's so wild, and just, it's cool. It's really cool. But somehow RicFlareon matched up against both of them in rounds 1 and round 2. And Raymondocool running a super spicy 6 Shadow team with the Shadow Bayleaf, the Shadow Abomasnow, the Shadow Alolan Raticate, the Shadow Kanto Ninetales, the Shadow Gligar, and the Shadow Feraligatr, just to get the action in. I will say, though, Raymondocool is actually running Magical Leaf on his Bayleaf. He is not running Razor Leaf, so it is a slightly different Bayleaf. A little bit more charge move oriented, I suppose, but like it's still Shadow Bayleaf. it's out there. And I guess looking at this team, again, Lantern is relatively strong, but you've now got to worry about 2 grass types instead of just the 1. So it's sort of a case where Gligar isn't that ultimate coverage that it was in the last game. So previously, Gligar, like, it just dominates against Bayleaf, and it was really good against a lot of Kawhi's other Pokemon as well. Whereas this one, if you run the Gligar, you have to be really scared of that Shadow Abomasnow, that is running Powder Snow, I should say, as well. And so it's kind of like, well, maybe you lean a bit more into the Skarmory, or you go the other way and you actually still run Gligar, but you actually lean into your fighting type roles to try and counter the Abomasnow as instead. So maybe the Vigoroth, maybe the Hakamo-o, although then you're really weak to the Powder Snows as well. So I think the answer is probably leaning into that Vigoroth. You've then also got pretty good matchup up against that Alolan Raticate that is double weak to super weak to the counter damage, and then has a pretty decent time against the rest of the Pokemon as well. Raymondocool doesn't have a hard counter, I would say, to Vigoroth, so I feel like Vigoroth is going to have a lot of play, maybe paired up with that Lantern, and from there, you could kind of go in a few ways. Maybe you just go Hakamo-o, because you've sort of got play against everything, actually. Like, you've got something to throw against every Pokemon, and worst case, you can just try and get some defensive debuffs onto the opponent. So let's jump into round number 2 against the Shadow Spice Lord himself, and we have Shadow Gligar into Shadow Gligar. So let's just see how they play it out here. Again, it's going to be a game of sort of CMP and, well, CAP, I should say, CAP, as we're now calling it. But Aerial Ace goes through, lets the first one through. Raymondocool just farming up a ton of energy here. Finally going to throw his move. RicFlareon just going to let it through as well. We can see that in the back, RicFlareon is essentially running double fighter. Again, neither of them actually having the fighting typing, but both sort of just running in here, and we'll see what Raymondo has in the back, I suppose. But RicFlareon actually going to let his Gligar go down, while Raymondocool wanted to win the switch advantage by burning that shield. So interestingly, we see a Vigoroth swap in, and he insta-swaps into a Alolan Raticate, which is not what you want to be facing a Vigoroth with. Doesn't get the Crunch debuff as well. I don't know what that swap was, but if he's got a Abomasnow in the back, that this is pretty dire for Raymondocool. I think he must have been expecting something else. He brings the Gligar back in, but now RicFlareon has been able to farm up all of this energy on the Raticate, throws the Body Slam, takes that Gligar, and it's actually Ninetales in the back with Ember. So yeah, I think that's just a really unfortunate swap from Raymondocool. Maybe I should have asked. Like, that might have been he taps the wrong one. He was expecting maybe he was expecting Trevenant to swap in. I'm not sure, but regardless, puts him in a really bad spot, and RicFlareon is just going to clean this game up. Pretty simply done, I think, after that huge sacrifice at the Raticate, and game 2. Leading straight into the Vigoroth versus Raticate, the swap into Ninetales, the counter swap into Hakamo-o, who resists all of the fire damage and is going to be able to get these Dragon Claws off to do a ton of damage to the Shadow Ninetales. Because Raymondocool is running all Shadows, these Dragon Tails are like even more deadly than they would be otherwise, because they add up so much. Raymondocool getting one last Weather Ball off, but again, it didn't actually come up with a resisted text, but I'm pretty sure it's resisted. So in comes the Gligar now. going to be able to go for these Dragon Claws to try and just weaken that Gligar down a little bit. Gligar will be able to essentially take Hakamo away. Oh, actually, those Dragon Tails are adding up insanely fast. Hakamo is a little bit cracked, I feel like, but Dragon Claw going to get the shield off of that Gligar, and now it is back to the Gligar mirror. We know that Gligar can take an Aerial Ace, so RicFlareon is going to do just that. Not going to burn his last shield yet. We see the swap out back into Alolan Raticate, and RicFlareon has the Vigoroth. It's been waiting for this moment, and there is nothing at all that Raticate can do that is going to end this thing. So counters all the way down. In comes the Gligar. It's got really low health. Raymondo needs to use his shield here to protect from the Body Slam, and I think he's even going to just back-to-back Body Slams. This is going to take out the Gligar, and that is going to put RicFlareon at 2-0 in this tournament, taking out both of the Shadow Bayleefs that he somehow got mashed up with, and, GG's there. But we're now going to go into round 3 up against Jumothy, who is running a non-Shadow Bayleef team, but he is running that Shadow Abomasnow still. So we've actually got the Lickitung, the Shadow Abomasnow, the Charjabug, Azumarill, Shadow Dragonair, and Shadow Feraligatr. So we're 3 shadows should still be a lot, but compared to the 6 shadows we saw on the previous round, it feels like it's not a lot, but it is. So I guess looking at this team, we again, Lantern isn't as good as it was against the... actually, you've got 2 water types. You've got an Azumarill, you've got a Feraligatr, you've got Lickitung with Power Whip, you've got that Abomasnow that I think is also running Powder Snow. I can actually check that. I can just go to the Dracovirs. Yeah, it's Powder Snow, Shadow Abomasnow, as opposed to a Razor Leaf one. But you've still got he's running Energy Ball, and then you've got the Charjabug that isn't too great for Lantern either. And then you've got Dragonair, who also resists all of Lantern's moves. So I don't know how strong Lantern is. I feel like maybe you pivot to something. Oh, you can't even pivot to like Grass by using like Trevenant, because Trevenant is going to be weak to Lickitung, relatively weak to Abomasnow, weak to the Shadow Claws from Feraligatr, and again, Dragonair sort of does pretty decently against Trevenant as well. Actually, I'm assuming it's Aquatail Body Slam. It is Aquatail Body Slam, so I guess it's actually not too bad, but still the Dragon Breath damage adds up. So I feel like this is a little bit of a dicey one, and I think RicFlareon is going to have to play it very neutrally. I think he's really going to have to lean into his sort of his knowledge of his Gligar matchups, his ability to pivot with Vigoroth potentially, because he doesn't really have a hard Vigoroth counter, I suppose. So I guess that's the way to go, and maybe you sort of round it out. I mean, you could just go Hakamo again. You could just go the double up with the Hakamo Vigoroth, and even if you get into a bit of a dicey matchup with Hakamo, you've still got something to do, and you just hope that you don't land on Azumarill, because then you're doing absolutely nothing. So I feel like this is going to be a pretty hard round for RicFlareon, but we'll see how he plays it. Skarmory actually straight into the Abomasnow. So this is actually a really good start. There's the Azumarill though, and now Rick is sort of sitting here without a hard check to this Azumarill. So he stays in with the Skarmory. He has a Vigoroth in the back, so he's not too... he doesn't need this Skarmory for that Abomasnow. He can save the Vigoroth for that matchup, use the Skarmory here instead, because I think that Skarmory is probably Rick's best answer to the Azumarill. So just going to throw these Sky Attacks. Again, Steel Wing, instead of just adding up damage slowly, gets a shield off of Jumothy now. And at this point, I feel like RicFlareon should probably shield up here and then get to another Sky Attack to try and KO that Azumarill. And we'll see if Jumothy wants a double shield in the lead, knowing that he's got that Abomasnow in the back. He actually does let it go. Doesn't want shield disadvantage, and actually going to go for a Volt Switch farm down with Charjabug. And so at this point, RicFlareon going to bring in that Gligar, again waiting to bring the Vigoroth into the Abomasnow in the back, and now has to make a call. You can take one move from this Abomasnow, even though an Energy Ball would really hurt, but just going to keep on throwing counters, go for a Body Slam now to try and force that last shield out of Jumothy. He does shield, so at that point I think that RicFlareon, probably in the spot where he burns his own shield, will be able to keep on getting this counter damage. Potentially needs to throw another Body Slam. Ooh, just not. Able to farm all the way down, and now able to unload a Rock Slide into the Charjabug. Really nicely done here, and Charjabug not going to like that at all. And Gligar, even Charge Attack priority. That's unfortunate for Jumothy, but even if that wasn't the case, I think this Gligar would be in a pretty decent spot to be able to get this Aerial Ace off and KO the Charjabug. But, X is only does that much. there wasn't much that Jumothy could do here, even if he had that second move to throw. RicFlareon takes out game number 1, and actually pretty dominant fashion, but game 2, a relatively neutral lead here with Skarmory into the Lickitung. Last game, he really benefited by being able to put that Vigoroth on the Abomasnow, keeping his lineups, knowing his lineup matchups, so that he could maneuver his Pokemon, pilot it, pivot into the right mons at the right time. So now we'll see what Jumothy decides to do with the Skarmory into the Lickitung. There's not much that Lickitung can do here. It is weakening the Skarmory down pretty well actually, but Skarmory is just sort of going to be able to win these matchups if you don't invest all of your shields. There is the first shield out of Jumothy. And I feel like RicFlareon is going to... Oh, he actually lets the Skarmory go. He doesn't want switch advantage. Oh, okay. No, he does. He doesn't get the Sky Tag off barely. But now it brings in the Vigoroth. And now I feel like he's at a spot where, if that Abomasnow is in the back, RicFlareon could get stuck here in a spot where his Gligar is going to be stuck into a Powder Snower. So we'll see how this goes. Getting 2 Body Slams off onto Vigoroth as well. Not ideal for Rick. And here comes the Azumarill. So it's Azumarill is going to be able to win out this matchup as well. So, I don't know how this goes. Okay? we're going to get some Body Slam spammage. We're going to get this one off. And if Jumothy is trying to go for a full bubble down, I think RicFlareon is going to even get to a 3rd Body Slam. But no, Azumarill going to go for an Ice Beam here. Just take out the Vigoroth sort of clean. And now it is all down to this Gligar. If there is an Abomasnow in the back, I don't know how well this is going to go for... there's the first shield. I think this is all going to rely on what is in the back. And it's actually the Charger Bug. RicFlareon probably just sigh of relief, exhale. Because now, Gligar definitely a much better spot against that Charger Bug than an Abomasnow. This is probably just straight X's. We saw how much damage that did before. Rick is getting a little bit low, but because he still has a shield, he's going to be able to throw this dig pretty comfortably. KO that Charge Bug, and now there is just the Azumarill here. Azumarill going to be doing a lot of bubble damage, but I think the RicFlareon is going to be able to get to a second Aerial Ace after burning that shield, get to another one here. Actually, really close. RicFlareon, maybe I shouldn't have had so much confidence in RicFlareon there, but, RicFlareon able to clean up. Wasn't even an Abomasnow in the back and take out round 3 with a 2-0, meaning that there are only 2 battles in this tournament that still have a 3-0 result, and those are these 2 right here. Jade Tisler 3-1-2 versus RicFlareon. And I think... Jay Tisler actually in the previous round, I'm pretty sure, took out ValiantVish to sort of land himself in this 3-0 spot. So ValiantVish, one of the other big names in the Australian PvP scene, one of the guys that you can always expect to be performing at an incredibly high level. And actually at this point, I should say, if ValiantVish makes it into the top 4, he has qualified for the World Championships. It's that is sort of where we're at this. And I probably should have said that at the start as well, that RicFlareon is at this point 20 championship points away from qualifying for the World Championships. So RicFlareon also, as soon as he gets into the top 4, which I think he might have actually secured at this point by being 3-0. Yeah, I think the RicFlareon is officially in the top 4. He sort of made top cut probably. But it means that he's going to have at least 10 championship points, which means that he's closed the gap even further to that World Championships invite. The winner only gets 15 championship points as opposed to 10, so it sort of is what it is. RicFlareon is going to have to top 4 another local tournament, but he will then be qualified for the World Championship. So getting very close to that championship, but regardless, we have a new opponent here, so let's change the teams over, and we have Jay Tisler 3-1-2. Not someone who's participated in a lot of play Pokemonage, but definitely someone to watch out for. He's running the Cresselia, the Skarmory, Charjabug, Vigoroth, Shadow Gligar, Shadow Feraligatr. So I think that is that 4 out of... oh no, it's not quite the same. Not quite the same. Oops, I left the wrong one up. There we go, my bad. But we've sort of seeing a lot of these meta staples popping up in this tournament. That Shadow Feraligatr, we haven't seen in action yet. And I guess it's not that strong against RicFlareon's team, unfortunately. It's bad against Lantern. It's not the best against Trevenant. You're not doing too awesome against the Hakamoa. Vigoroth resists your Shadow Claws. So I don't know. I hope that we see one. I hope we do. But Cresselia... what moves is Cresselia running? Cresselia is running Grass Knot Future Sight. and everything else is pretty standard. We've got Hydro Cannon Crunch on the Shadow Feraligatr as well. So actually, Crunch. Oh, I forgot about. Yeah, I guess it's okay against Trevenant in the grand scheme of things. But regardless, I don't. This is another one where it's like it's a very neutral team versus a relatively neutral team. There aren't sort of glaring weaknesses to exploit. There aren't like scum. Like everything has counters, I think. But I feel like Hakamo'o is a Pokemon that looks relatively decent against a lot of these Pokemon because, you know, the dragon typing has resistances against water, fire, grass, electric. Like we've got a lot of electric moves running around, we've got water moves running around. So like we've got grass moves on the Cresselia as well. So like you've got some realm for neutrality, I suppose, but this is another one that is going to come down to, I think, a little bit more skill than just team composition. So let's jump into game number 1 of round 4 to take a look as well. Jay Tisler figuring out his team. And we've got the Vigoroth into the Cresselia. Not the greatest of matchups for the Vigoroth, but we can see we have the Gligar and the Lantern as well. So Lantern would not be good in this matchup at all. So I guess Vigoroth is going to be a little bit better than that. But really just going to have to try and pack on as much damage as possible here onto that Cresselia. Goes for the big future sight as well, which is so unfortunate for Rick. We see a swap out into the Gligar because, I mean, because it doesn't have Aurora Beam, it doesn't have super effective damage, but gets another future sight off. Oh my gosh, Rick, you have 2 shields. But Jay Tislet swapping out into the Gligar of his own. We've seen this. RicFlareon was in essentially the opposite position in round 2, where he's now going to be able to go for another Aerial Ace. Jay Tisler shields up and will now just be able to farm down. And now it's like, what do you do here? Because that Lantern is going to have to be staring down the barrel of some digs, but you've also know that there's that Cresselia that is still out there with some potential grass knots that Lantern will not necessarily want to face. So I don't know, gets a charge move off from the Gligar here. Barely any health left on the Vigoroth. Lantern now has a lot of work to do against Jay Tisler. Shield up a dig, which is nice. Jay Tisler, clearly a playstyle of going for a lot of hard-hitting moves, forcing some big decisions from RicFlareon, and now it's Charger Bug in the back. This is not looking good for RicFlareon. He has a lot of energy here, but like, this is really going to start to add up. The X-Scissor doing some big damage to that Lantern, and now actually at the back-to-back Surfs, so he will be able to take out Charger Bug here, but he will then still have to face a Pokemon in the back. And there's another charge move to burn RicFlareon's shield. So I think RicFlareon, it looks like he's going to be charging up, potentially going to try and go for another double off. Oh my gosh, full farm down. What does Jay Tisler bring in here? RicFlareon has a potential catch in the bank as well with the Vigoroth. Maybe he can do this. He gets the Thunderbolt off onto the no shield Cresselia. That is not going to be enough, but he needs another Surf. A swap out to try and catch a move. Tried to catch a move onto Vigoroth in return, but unfortunately didn't fall for it, and now that Lantern is going to go out. But RicFlareon is definitely going for as many win cons as possible there. Really And we finally see the Shadow Feraligatr as well. So, we see a quick swap into the Vigoroth. In comes the Skarmory, and we also have the Lantern in the back. I guess this is a little unfortunate. I guess Jay Tisler actually really identifying that Lantern might be around. So again, this is a pretty decent spot to use the Skarmory. Sort of, I guess, get it out there, being able to do a lot of damage, take a lot of these moves on the chin, and just be able to put the pressure onto RicFlareon. So I think Jay Tisler still in quite a dominant position here after giving RicFlareon his first game loss of the local tournament. And again, just off the heels of taking out ValiantVish as well. So it could be a bit of a Kingslayer here. But taking out the Vigoroth, we now have Skarmory versus Skarmory. A swap it into Charger Bug. And RicFlareon has a Skarmory and a Lantern up against this Charger Bug, which is not the greatest. Still, Lantern not the worst matchup up against Charger Bug, as we saw in the last matchup. The Surfs definitely sort of do add up over time. So it brings Charger Bug down into the yellow. And at this point, RicFlareon decides to shield up the X-Scissor, wants to keep getting these Surfs off, does not want this Charger Bug to see a second of the Skarmory. Like, that is just the disaster scenario. No thank you, I don't want those Volt switches over there. Lets the Charger Bug go down, and now Jay Tisler brings back in the Feraligatr, which is such a rogue move. But at the same time, like, those crunches, you've got to respect them. even goes for the Hydro Cannon and gets a shield out of RicFlareon and catches the Surf into Skarmory. This would be so nice if it was a Thunderbolt, but that's not true. But really nice catch from Jay Tizzler. Gets another Surf off to get the shield. Swaps into Skarmory to catch a move. RicFlareon just needs to get to a charge move to take this Feraligatr out. Can take the Hydro Cannon and get to the Sky Attack. So actually will be able to take out the Feraligatr. But Jay Tizzler definitely playing really strong here. This is going to be a big game 3. Just going to pause to give us a moment to sort of catch up, refresh. We finally saw the Shadow Feraligatr. We're at 1-1. The Charge Bug doing a fair bit of damage from Jay Tizzler's side, and RicFlareon is able to come through that with a Skarmory as well. Unfortunately, I do feel like the Feraligatr wasn't very strong. I don't think that it's a Pokemon to run again into RicFlareon's team. It just doesn't seem to have that much play, unfortunately, but regardless, we'll see what they do into game number 3, and we see the Charge Bug into the Trevenant. What a pick from RicFlareon. This is a little bit rogue. Going to be going for those Shadow Balls, I assume, just constantly. Can take a move on the Trev. X is up. We've got the Ghost typing as well as the Grass typing, but there's a swap into Gligar, so we see a swap into Vigoroth. This is an interesting play. I guess, I don't know, this is such a neutral, strange matchup. Lets the Body Slam come through. We know Jay Tizzler's propensity for going for the big moves, but just goes for the Aerial Ace here, getting a shield out of RicFlareon though, and now it goes for a Body Slam. That Gligar is really low, so this Body Slam, if it went through, actually would, I think, barely be enough to take it out, but going to go for the shield on Jay Tizzler's side as well. There's the big dig, just constantly able to read Rick's mind, whether he's going to shield or not, and even gets a full farm down. And whichever Pokemon RicFlareon brings in here, okay, that's the play. You bring in the Trevenant, you go straight for the Seed Bomb. You want to take this Gligar out, but there was a simul swap into the Charge Bug. Such high quality plays from Jay Tizzler here, and now the Charge Bug going for the X's or into the Lanturns. We're going to be going for another bit of back and forth because the Charge Bug is low. We only need one Surf. Looks like RicFlareon recognizing that he needs energy on this Lantern, so just lets even more damage come through so that he can almost get to a little bit of back-to-backsies here. Going for this Surf that would be enough to KO. Lets the Charge Bug go. In comes the Cresselia, and now it's like, okay, how do you take out that much bulk with this little health remaining on your Lantern and also your little bit of Trev in the back? I don't know, but he's certainly going to try, and I don't know what just happened there. I don't know what Rick was trying to tap. It looked like he tapped on the Thunderbolt, then he swapped, and he was trying to go for the Shadow Ball, and then he was going for the Seed Bomb, but he's ended up going for the Shadow Ball. If this goes through, it would be huge, but there's a shield, and it was a Gligar swap as well. So this is so hard to keep up with, but the Aerial Ace comes through, take the Trevenant out, in comes back to Lantern, and that Lantern is just not going to be able to take out both Pokemon, which does mean the RicFlareon goes down to 3-1, meaning that Jay Tizzler, the 4-0 player, I guess, going through into the top 4. And so again, this was 4 rounds of Swiss, and then it's top cut. The top 4 move along. In this case, we had Jay Tizzler at number 1. I can't remember the order of number 2 and number 3. I think number 2 was Micah 0602, if I'm remembering the numbers correctly. He also beat me in this local and at the last one in the last video. And then in 3rd place, we had ValiantVish, and in 4th place, RicFlareon, able to make it to top cut. So again, all 4 of these battlers with a guaranteed 10 championship points. At this point, ValiantVish officially qualifying for the World Championships, so massive congrats to him. Only the 2nd Aussie to qualify so far this season, which it's April. It's not even, it's March. Locals were very necessary, we'll put it that way. But also RicFlareon now coming in officially. In some sense, the rest of this tournament doesn't matter for Rick championship point wise, because he can gain another. Well, actually, that's not true. It's not true. It's true from a World Championship qualification standpoint. It's not true from a travel award competition standpoint, because essentially the top players on the leaderboard, championship point wise, will get travel award, and so RicFlareon is sort of going to want to try and be as high on that leaderboard as possible, and every point is going to matter. So that is essentially where the stakes are lying from this point on, plus the glory of saying that you won the largest local tournament in Australia. So, that's not too bad, but the way that Top Cut works is that 1st place plays 4th, and 2nd place plays 3rd. And that means we're back. We're back for another set. Jay Tisler taking that last one off of Rick with a 2-1 result. They're going in again. Jay Tisler was sort of standing there like, well, Rick knows our strategies now. We'll see how we go. But at this point, so what have they sort of played a lot with? So that Charger Bug is coming out every single time because Rick doesn't really have I was going to say he doesn't really have a hard counter. He's sort of got Gligar. Gligar is sort of that main counter to the Charger Bug. And so I don't see Rick not bringing that Gligar into pretty much every battle here. We've also got that Cresselia that is sort of doing a lot of work as well. We saw in that last game how its bulk was just able to sort of, I guess, exist as too much for Rick to sort of overcome when he was sort of at that late stage of the game. But really what is carrying Jay Tisler through is that ability to sort of keep landing these big moves through. That game one, just Future Sight after Future Sight, so much instant damage. So I feel like RicFlareon also potentially needs to be a little bit more, I guess, mindful of that strategy from Jay Tisler. But of course, there's always that push and pull of does Jay Tisler realize that and, adapt his strategy so that he doesn't do that as much? Does RicFlareon call that? It opens up a whole new game of chess and checkers. So let's go into game essentially number 4, but game number 1 of the semi-finals of this local tournament. And we get the Gligar into the Charger Bug. So a nice lead for Rick. And I would expect that after some energy, we get a swap out. There's the Cresselia. And again, no hard counter. So RicFlareon actually opting to go for a dig to try and get some big damage onto the Cresselia straight away. And actually going to farm up again, a little bit more energy, swap into the Skarmory, maybe trying to catch a Grass Knot. But no such luck. So we do see a Future Sight. But luckily, RicFlareon knows that his Skarmory with that Steel typing can definitely take those Future Sights pretty well. So this is sort of the other way to sort of try and recognize Jay Tisler's strategy of getting that big damage off and being able to adapt in a way that you can still take that big damage but survive. So now able to take the Cresselia out, no more Future Sight this game, and I would expect that we bring that Charge Bug back in so we can try and farm all the way down, but RicFlareon is going straight for the big Brave Bird, does get the shield out of that Charge Bug, and now with the defense debuff, not going to get as much farm, and now I guess you just bring that Gligar straight back in. Here's the swap out into the opposing Shadow Gligar, so now Rick has to go, okay, where do I want my Vigoroth? That other Gligar is a little bit rough for me, but I really want my Gligar for that Charger Bug, so let's weaken it down into the yellow and now bring in Vigoroth, and Vigoroth is going to be in a much stronger position, can take that one dig, we'll be able to get farming up very aggressive here from RicFlareon, going up until that next move, now going to go for that Body Slam and just wasting all of that energy from Jay Tisler. But now, Rick is sort of sitting here with a fair bit of energy on his Vigoroth, so he decides to shield up. There's 2 charge moves, which is a little bit unfortunate, but regardless, Rick knows that he'll have to burn 2 shields, but he'll still be able to get some charge moves off. Goes for a Body Slam to try and get a shield out of Charger Bug, and he does get it, which means, oh no, he's just going to swap here. Some interesting plays from RicFlareon. I thought he was going to go for the Rock Slide, but maybe he was just like, Gligar can do the job, which it definitely can. So now Gligar going to come and do the dig, and this will pretty much put that Charge Bug out. To be honest, I was kind of expecting that he would just let Vigoroth go and let the Gligar do it with 2 shields, but in the end, doesn't really matter. RicFlareon just putting the maximum stress onto Jay Tisler. But now into game number 2, Skarmory into the Cresselia. RicFlareon doing really well at calling the team lineups here. We can see that we do have the Trevenant in the back as well, though. So Rick is kind of like, hey, I've got Trevenant for that matchup. I don't need Skarmory on the Cresselia this time as much. And we actually see a swap out into the Vigoroth after weakening down. This also seeming like a really strong strategy from Rick in not just using Vigoroth as a safe swap, but doing a big chip damage to the opponent and then bringing in Vigoroth to sort of as a cleanup Pokemon. Really seems to be working quite well. Gets the shield with the Rock Slide, which is a little bit, unfortunate in some sense, because otherwise the Skarmory would be going down. But going to let Vigoroth go this time, and now you're not bringing in the Trevenant. So it's going to bring in a Skarmory. You sort of have to make a decision here. Do you go for the charge move, or do you let a charge move come through? Just going to let one come through, which is absolutely fine. There is the big Brave Bird, but Skarmory takes it really well, and now Cresselia coming in here. Does have enough for a Future Sight and goes for it, keeping Skarmory on the tiniest little bit of health, going to be able to get a Brave Bird off here. This will do a lot of damage to that Cresselia, and now Trevenant going to be able to clean up here. The question is, what is in the back for Jay Tisler? It is all going to rely on that question, I think. Shields up a Future Sight, going to be able to farm down Cresselia. What do we have in the back? We know that there's, we know one of them, we don't know the other. And in comes Feraligatr. This is, like, again, this isn't the worst matchup in general because you have Shadow Claw, you have Crunch on Feraligatr, but Trevenant has so much energy. You've just used your last shield. Trevenant going to be able to shield up here. It looks like Trevenant is farming up energy, and before another Hydro Cannon comes through, RicFlareon going to be throwing the Seed Bomb. Shadow Feraligatr, so it is not very tanky at all. That Seed Bomb is enough, and Trevenant actually taking out the Skarmory in the end for the 2-0 victory in the semi-finals, getting that revenge on Jay Tisler, and Jay Tisler sort of securing himself in the sort of third and fourth spot alongside Micah, because as you can see, ValiantVish is the, wrong. Oh, I'm gonna have to move that back to the thingo. I meant to take this team off and add this team back in. But let's just okay. I think that puts us in the right spot where we are now in round one, game one. And maybe we should just fact check that. Yeah, I think there's the Trevenant. Getting the Seed Bomb. Okay, we've been here before. So, RicFlareon versus ValiantVish. These two have faced each other so often in so many formats, harkening all the way back to that very first Melbourne Play Pokemon tournament, that Melbourne Regional in 2022. These guys were the finalists. RicFlareon ended up winning then, but they sort of said, while we're at this local, that these guys just sort of go back and forth. You know, Vish wins one, then Rick wins one, then Vish wins one, then Rick wins one. I don't know if you guys know who won the previous one before this battle, but maybe that's a spoiler, because I sure didn't. But regardless, these two coming in, and ValiantVish are running a pretty similar team in that we're seeing the Skarmory, the Charger Bug, the Shadow Feraligatr as well, and the Shadow Gligar, actually. And then we have the Lickitung and the Annihilate coming in. So Annihilate makes things a little bit more interesting. Well, let's check what Vish is actually running on his Annihilate. He's running the Night/Shadow Ball variant. So his Gligar is a little bit safe. He doesn't have to worry. Actually, Gligar is looking really safe. So we saw Gligar in the battles against Jay Tisler. Gligar was very much working as that Charger Bug counter. And because Annihilate doesn't have that Ice Punch, he's not in too bad of a spot. Vish is actually running Ice Beam on his Feraligatr though, so that is the one little bit of ice coverage that he has. But again, I haven't seen anything from this tournament so far that shows that Shadow Feraligatr is a good Pokemon to be running up against Rick. It just seems to never be in the right place at the right time. Like, it wasn't too bad against, again, Trevenant in general. But Trevenant with almost 2 Seed Bombs of energy is just too much. So maybe it comes out still. Lickitung is a bit of an interesting one though. It's definitely a bit of a ValiantVish staple, because it's a good Pokemon, I guess. Like, it's not like it's a classic Vish move. It's just a classic good team move in general. But it definitely sort of puts a bit more pressure onto that Trevenant than might be otherwise. And I don't know, it would be really hard to bring Trevenant into this team, I think, because you've got the Night Slashes, you've got Lickitung, you've got Skarmory, you've got Gligar, you've got Shadow Claw, Crunch from Feraligatr, and then you've got Charger Bug. So I have a feeling that we're not going to see Trevenant this time around, but regardless, I think that we are going to be sort of seeing more of that leaning into the Gligar, into the Skarmory to try and soak up some damage. And then from there, maybe bringing the Vigor off. I don't know about Hakamo-o. I think you could bring... Actually, I feel like Hakamo-o is not too bad. Because again, you don't have that much ice damage coming in. There's just the one move, the one charge move from that Feraligatr. And you're still doing pretty decently in that matchup anyway, because you resist the Hydro Cannons. So they need to just go for Ice Beam. So, you know, let's jump into just these two Titans battling it out. Again, ValiantVish now, as of like this battle, he is a World Championship invitee, qualifier, I should say. So, RicFlareon versus ValiantVish, battle for the ages, and we have the Skarmory into the Gligar, and then we can see we have the Lantern in the Gligar in the back. So we see an instant swap into the Skarmory, and RicFlareon is probably looking at this and cheering because he has the Lantern. He's able to swap in here, put ValiantVish right up against the wall, and Vish can't do too much. The Discord messages coming through as well, but we've got the Sky Attack. it's not doing anything here. I feel like Vish could try and just stall for time potentially. Goes for the Brave Bird to try and get some big damage off, but this Skarmory is just not going to live to see another day. And now we see that Gligar coming back in, and the serves are really going to add up here. The Gligar not going to love all of this energy that Lanturn has been able to pick up on the Skarmory. This is an awful position for ValiantVish. Lets the Gligar go down completely as well, and it's Annihilate in the back. So all of his hopes on that ape, and Rick is just in such a strong position. Brings in the Gligar. He's got 2 shields. There's no Ice Punch on that Annihilate, and Vish just stops tapping. That was non-competitive. That was such a dominant spot. I guess Vish was hoping that Rick didn't have Lanturn in the back, because honestly, from that point, there was just nothing that could be done. So I think he must have been gambling on Rick having a different team of 3, because it was really all lost from there. But we do actually see the Shadow for Alligator. So we get the Skarmory into Shadow for Alligator. We've actually got to swap into Hakamo in the back for Rick. This is an interesting one. We see the Hydro Cannon come through, and look how much damage that Shadow Hydro Cannon does on the one hand, but also how well Skarmory can just take it to the face. So get his shield there from the Feraligatr. And now brings in the Gligar, which is really interesting, because Gligar definitely cannot take the Hydro Cannons as well as the Skarmory can. But after Skarmory's already taken one, it can't take another anyway. So you may as well swap into the Gligar to try and get these quick Aerial Aces off, I suppose. Burning both shields here in the Gligar matchup. ValiantVish potentially trying to avoid any sort of... Okay, now in comes the Gligar. We've seen this so many times through this tournament, the strategy of bringing your own Gligar into a weakened Gligar, so you have a little bit of an advantage. ValiantVish throwing his Aerial Ace here into the Gligar. I think it will survive, but then gets a little bit of farm. But RicFlareon not going to let that farm come through. Swaps into the Skarmory. Skarmory had a way to go before he could get to a charge move though, so ValiantVish able to get quite a bit of energy there. Actually survived to the move. Wasn't expecting that, but regardless, this Gligar with even more energy now. Going to see this Hakamo coming in. One Aerial Ace going to land here, and this is not going to be great for Hakamo. It's only just clicked for me that I think I was talking about it not having the fighting type before, when it definitely does. So if no one's commented that I was wrong earlier, they would have by now. But regardless, the Dragon Claws coming through. This is going to take out that Feraligatr. And it is Lickitung in the back, and there is just not enough juice in RicFlareon's tank here to take this thing out. Not even able to get up to a Brick Break. Going to get a Dragon Claw off, and then not even going to get to a Dig. But even a Dig, you would still be losing this matchup. And RicFlareon just stopped recording straight there. So first game, not competitive at all. RicFlareon just completely swept to the floor. But Vish able to come back in that game too, where it was a bit more of an actual game, I should say. There are actually decisions made. But regardless, that means that we are going into game number 3, and whoever wins this game will win the largest local tournament in Australia. I'm not expecting that Skarmory to come back out from ValiantVish. Like we saw, maybe he does bring it back. Maybe he risks it because RicFlareon, he dominated in game 1 with the Lanturn. Knew that Vish was going to be scared off of the Skarmory game 2, so didn't even bother bringing in his Lanturn. Does he expect that Vish is going to just bring it back in game number 3? I don't know, but that Lickitung, again, in the same way as that Cresselia a little bit earlier, I feel like Rick is ending up in these games in a lot of spots where he has like very little bits all over the place at the end of the game. So he's got energy here on low health. He's got energy here on low health, which can really help in a lot of scenarios, except when your opponent is just sitting on one beefcake in the back. Like earlier it was the Cresselia against Vish, here it was the Lickitung. There's just like there's too much to take out. Even if you get your big charge move off on both of these low health mons, you just do not have enough to be able to push all the way through in the end. So we'll see if RicFlareon, if that strategy works for this time around. Maybe he expects that Lickitung might be in the back. I can't believe I was talking about Hakamo as if it didn't have the fighting type, by the way. But regardless, we have the Vigoroth into the Lickitung, a very strong lead for Rick, but it's not the worst for ValiantVish, even though these counters add up so much. At least the Body Slam spammage does still hurt the Vigoroth, but yikes. Get some energy up on the Lickitung, going to swap into the Feraligatr. Going to see the Shadow Claws doing not much to Vigoroth again, just resisted Ghost Move into resisted Ghost Move, but now the Lanturn has come back in. Vish's nightmare Pokemon, apparently, because now this Lantern is going to be able to take literally any move from Feraligatr. 2 moves even. Hydro Cannons, Ice Beams, they're resisted. Doing nothing to Lantern. Although they actually, maybe I shouldn't have said that, because they're actually adding up quite a bit. But regardless, that Lantern getting a fair bit of energy, but now Lickitung, with all of the energy it got on the Vigoroth, able to deploy it now, goes for the Power Whip. There's the shield from the Lantern. Here's the Thunderbolt to take out the Lantern, and the question now becomes, what is in the back for ValiantVish? Can he do anything that can take out a full Vigoroth and a full Gligar? I don't know. I don't know if that Pokemon exists, but we'll definitely see it try. And it is the Skarmory. Skarmory will have like a relatively neutral matchup against the Vigoroth, but I just don't think that there is enough in the tank to be able to take out this Vigoroth and take out that Gligar in the back. The counters alone adding up onto this Skarmory, and it is down into the yellow. A Rock Slide coming through. There's the shield on the Skarmory, and now Vigoroth just going to stay in RicFlareon, knowing that he can just absorb some energy from the Skarmory. There's the Sky Attack. Here's the Gligar. Gligar only needs to get to 1 Aerial Ace. There is a potential catch from ValiantVish. I don't think it'll be enough to save him, but he's still going to shield up the Sky Attack here. Going to be very careful to not get caught. And there's the Lickitung. Farms up to 2. Going to see a Body Slam potentially from this Lickitung, but regardless, RicFlareon will be able to go for this first Aerial Ace. This will take out the Lickitung, and then he'll be able to throw another. Actually going for the Dig. Take out the Skarmory with that Steel Flying typing. That is going to be GG's. RicFlareon taking out the tournament. And of course, third with the Legend pose. But regardless, big shout out to RicFlareon for taking out the 6-rounder. Did drop a set. He didn't sweep all the way through. He did drop a set to Jay Tisler in that round 4 of the Swiss section. I apologize if it just all of a sudden started raining really hard. So hopefully that isn't too loud, if it is loud at all. But regardless, RicFlareon coming through again with the 10 championship points. Going to be coming through. Only needs a top 4, 1 more local tournament, and he will be qualified for Worlds. It is essentially guaranteed at this point. But just really, really well played from Rick, and a really nicely built team that he didn't actually use any of the mons that he couldn't use last week. It's just that he had a team that was able to conquer I guess the teams that people were bringing, and that Lantern really coming in clutch as well. I think that Rick said on Twitter, I should have put his tweet up actually so I could put it on the screen, but he pretty much said that wasn't super impressed by Hakamo'o, but it was really good against the sort of spicier teams that we saw at the start from Kawhi and Raymondocool, who were both running that Shadow Bayleaf. But yeah, really wild tournament. And, really, really nice to see RicFlareon and Vish taking it out in the finals again. I also was in this tournament, finished 8th place, I should say, I did get to, I was going to say not a great showing, but I did finally actually bring Wailmer out into a play Pokemon battle and got a win with it. I did upload that as a YouTube short because there's no need to see my full battles. That's the only one you need to see. That's the one that matters. So, that's out there as well. But regardless, thank you to RicFlareon for sharing his footage as well. And of course, there were a ton of local tournaments that went over the last week. So we did just put together again, I keep clicking on this one. This is apparently the photo that just keeps popping up when I'm trying to show anything else. But regardless, it is good to see everyone, and that is sort of one of the best parts of the local tournament experience. But the graphic I meant to bring up was this one, where we do have the Oceanic local winners of the week, and essentially all of these teams went through to win the local. Asterisks around Rocket Claire, but Crusader and Rocket Claire both went 3-0. The tournament thing didn't match them together, and Crusader just won on the tiebreaker. But both 3-0 results at that Hobart one. But regardless, if you are looking for some other team inspiration for your own tournaments this season in the World of Wonders, these are some teams that had some success. And I realized that I also didn't actually. There was one other thing I meant to plug at the very start of this video. Do I edit it back? Probably not. I guess we'll just put it here in that the World Champion Brawl is actually coming up this Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, American time. It's actually going to be 5 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Monday. But yeah, this coming Sunday, so 2 days from now, 2 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. UTC, I think. But essentially, World Champion Brawl. It's Axon versus me, Weedle, versus Dancing Rob, versus Dunebug97 as the Sylph Arena World Champion with 3 regional championships up his belt. These guys going to be taking out a round robin. Again, give you some more team inspiration for the World of Wonders season. So definitely look forward to that. And that'll actually be streamed over on Twitch. So link will be in the description as always. But as always, also, the VOD is going to be uploaded to YouTube afterwards, but definitely recommend going over and checking that stream out. It is definitely going to be a good one with some fancy casters as well. Obviously I'm there, but we'll also have Tomahawk UK coming in from the UK, no wonder, as well as Soph Toph and Rise to Occasion. So definitely worth checking that out. Did mean to mention that at the start, but completely forgot. But with that said, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, especially that subscribe one, and I will see you in the next one, and of course over on that stream over on Twitch. So do go check that out as well. But I already said see you in the next one, so bye.